My name is Mary Etoya Anderson Lowery. I was born September 11th, 1935 in Lincoln County. I was born to Delphine Killian Graham and Louis A. Anderson. I was raised by my grandparents, both from my mother's side and my dad's side. And I lived in Lincoln County all my life, went to school in Lincoln County. We walked to school when I started the school. I started the school a little early because I had another cousin living with us that she had to go to school. She was in a higher grade, and she just took me along with her because she was keeping me at the house while my grandmother worked and my mom. And I would just go and sit in the class. We went to Rock Hill Elementary School. It was a little school that sat off the road behind Gold Hill Baptist Church. And we had to walk whether it rained or snowed. That's how we got to school, backwards and forth. And I attended school there until I was in like the 8th or 9th grade. We moved to Tucker's Grove School. And we went to Tucker's Grove until 2 years before I graduated from 12th grade. And in my growing up, we had a lot of, we didn't have too much to do, but we played a lot. Wherever we went, we either had to ride. I had a cousin, older cousin, that had a car that he would take us places sometime, and I had a uncle that had a mule and a wagon. And I remember as a little girl, me and my cousin and best friend, Juanita McLean, riding to camp meeting on the wagon. And it was fun to us. And we would always have to go to church, regardless. When we walked to church, we had to walk, whatever. We had to go every Sunday to church. And when we went to camp meeting, it's not like they do today. We had to go to service under the arbor. We couldn't be running up and down through the aisle like the young kids do now. We had to go there and sit. And we always had to go right in front of our parents and sit in front of our parents. I remember we was going to church, and we were sitting in church, and we was kind of sitting at the back of the church, and this man, young man, looked in the window, and he just kept looking in the window, winking his eye at me. And when we got out of the church, it was Franklin Lowery, my husband. So I met him at the church. And then when he wanted to walk with me home, he had to walk with me home with my grandmother walking behind us. My grandmother, my Aunt Mag, Uncle Streeton, and Juanita. Juanita was with us. And I mean, you know, we was having fun. We'd sit on the porch and swing in the swings on Sunday evenings, and it wasn't too much else for us to do. There was a lot of other children in our neighborhood that we played with and whatever. I remember one of my next door neighbors, I was always real close to them. Her dad's name was Jack McLean, and they walked to school with us. But this one day we was coming from school, she decided her granddaddy had basket where you catch fish out of the creek. She had this basket, and he had this basket in the creek, and she said, "Come on, let's get the fish out of the basket." So helped with her get the fish out of the basket and came home. And my grandmother was not happy about that. She wouldn't let me walk with her to school no more for a long, long time. She said we could have fell in the creek. And I don't know, parents back then was real strict. You just didn't get to do too much stuff. I had my granddaddy on my mama's side worked at Alba Mill, and an uncle. That's on, they call it Mere Posey, the hill. They worked there. I remember when the mill closed. I don't know how long they worked there because they moved from Lincoln County to North Belmont and stayed down in North Belmont for years before they moved back to their own home place. Most of the people in my area where I was born and raised at, they owned their own home. My grandmother from my mama's side worked for Junior Deleger Sr., who lived off of the June Deleger Road. I was in and out of their house all the time. I knew all of their children, all of the family, because sometimes she would take me with her to work. We picked cotton together sometime. Of course, I didn't pick very much cotton because we didn't farm. And I would tell them right quick, I ain't got no cotton over here in the pig. And my dad worked at Duke Power. He went in service when I was about 3, I guess I remember. And I think I was about 10 when he came out the service. I forget the branch of service that he was in, but I know that he was one of the first black men in this part of service to do something with an airplane. And my grandmother from my dad's side, she worked in Lincoln. But my great-grandmother from my granddad's side worked for Graham Morrison. Her name was Caroline Morrison. And she died when I was about 4. Wasn't too much for us to do in our area. We didn't have too much. We had to walk to the store, grocery store. That was like every week on Saturday morning, we would go to the grocery store and get what groceries we had to buy. But my grandmother always canned stuff because the Dellingers always had a farm. They would kill beef and pigs, and she would can her sausage and her backbones and ribs, and we would always have some type of meat to eat. And they would usually give her like a lot of ham hocks and whatnot. So we never did go hungry. Pick blackberries. Yes, I had to pick blackberries. And we had chickens. I remember we could raise the plank up off the porch, and it would be maybe a chicken nest down there, and get the eggs out from the chicken nest. I can also remember them going out in the yard, getting the chicken, wringing its neck, and killing it, cleaning it and washing it and cooking it, and I thought that was just so good. My children nowadays will not eat that type of chicken. Say that's a dead chicken. I remember going to, as I said, camp meeting on the horse, riding on the horse and buggy with Uncle Streeton. a mule, wasn't a horse. And I remember they kept chickens at the campground in chicken coops.
How else was camp meeting different then than it is today?
Because they had, it's different, ours is different today than it was then because they had service during the daytime. And now, during the daytime, it's nothing going on and everything's going on at night. And when service is going on, there's a lot of noise, everything else is going on, and you just can't really get into the service. I think it was when they blew that bugle or whatever for time for you to go to camp meeting now. You didn't find kids running around. The kids went in with the parents, or the parents took the kids with them. Oh, it's just like today, the parent go to camp meeting, campground, go in the arbor and whatnot, and they don't know where the kids are. But now, when my kids was growing up, and we went to campground, yeah, they got to play a lot and played a lot. But when we went under the arbor, they had to go under the arbor until time for us to go out. And then by that time, it was time to go to bed.
Now then, similar to now, do you have ministers that come from all around the area, in addition to, well, there's some from Lincoln County that came too?
Yeah, we have different ministers coming in the area to preach now every night. For instance, this year, I think it's August 23rd, my son is going to deliver the service that night. And it's been several young men from our area that's delivered service on the arbor. Ronnie Roseborough, I don't know whether you know the Roseboroughs or not, from St. James area. He's preached one night. Ralph Ship, he's delivered services. And it's just a lot different.
Do you remember, are there ministers that stick out in your mind from when you were a kid being at camp meeting? Are there any that just stick out?
Reverend A.W. Stowe, Reverend Mackley Davis' son. Reverend Mackley Davidson was my minister. He said when he started preaching at Gold Hill, I was about 3 years old. And when he died, it was about a month before my oldest daughter was to get married. He was there like 40-some years.
Why does he stick out so much? Just because he was a minister at Gold Hill?
Because I guess he was a minister of Gold Hill, and he was in and out of the family, both of the families. At all times, he would come to our houses and have dinner and eat with us and talk with us, and he was just like a family member.
Well, tell me a little bit about Rock Hill, where you went to school. What was it? How was it laid out?
Rock Hill was, when I went to school at Rock Hill, it had, when I started, we had 2 big rooms and what we call a rostrum. It was a little thing that sit up there, like the rooms was there. Later on, they built another room to the back. And like the first grade was in this first room, and they had more than one grades together. The teachers usually taught more than one grade. And yes, when I went to school at Rock Hill, another thing that stuck out was how we got our books. We got hand-me-down books from other schools. We didn't get new books. And then every once in a while, they would have a dentist come in and check our teeth, and sometimes they would send us state orange juice and things that was furnished by the state. We had I remember basketball. We had a basketball team, girls, and it was. I remember some of the ladies that played on the basketball team. It was a dirt team, a dirt ball team, a dirt field, and they played. At that time, I remember the principal was Mr. Washington, Mr. Moore. That's what it was. Mr. Moore was the principal then. And the girls played against Mount Vernon and a school from West Lincoln area. And they would play
Oh, Bethel or Mitchell or something?
Mitchell. Mm-hmm.
So y'all would travel to, where would you play at one location?
I don't remember how they traveled. Then I guess the principal and maybe somebody would carry them there, or maybe someone would bring them here. I don't remember, because at that time I don't know how old I was, but I wasn't very old. But I just remember them playing ball, because that was Mary Savannah Smith, Jenny Gibson, Earlene Gibson, Dorothy Renneman. It was just, I don't forgot how many it was they played.
So the basketball court was at the school?
Mm-hmm.
Right there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did the whole school come and watch?
Well, yeah, they would let school out for you to watch. And they also had, we would have like May Days, where you would wrap the maypole. And I don't know what it was called, because sometimes you would go to a different school, because I remember going to Mount Vernon one time for a school outing, and we were wrapping the maypole. And then we would have some other type of competition going on.
Who were your teachers at Rock Hill?
One of the ones that I just dearly loved was Carrie Carson, and Miss Alexander, Mr. Moore, Mr. Carley was the principal, and we had several, I just can't remember their names, teachers from Charlotte.
I think Miss Carson's still alive.
Oh, she is.
Yeah, she
Now
lives
I
out
stay.
of town, right?
Yeah, she lives in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Stay in touch with her. She taught my mom, me, my dad, and everybody in the family, just about. And she lived with my aunt Juanita's mama, Aunt Maggie. She lived, so she was always close by.
Edith Lomax talked a lot about
Miss Carr, yeah. Yep, I remember her. She's a sweet lady.
So tell me about, so you went to Tucker's.
Mm-hmm.
What grades did you attend? What grades did you go through at Tucker's?
I went from either the 7th, the 8th to the 11th. And that was like the middle of the year, because we transferred from Tucker's to Newbold in, I think it was March of '52. And I graduated in '53.
And where was the school at Tucker's? Where was it located?
Like where sort of like where the church is sitting now. They tore it down when they built the church, when they added more to the church.
Do you remember anyone talking about Rock Hill being called a Rosenwald school?
No. Mm-mm. It was always Rock Hill from the time I
I don't mean the
remember.
name, but that was the kind of school it was. It was called.
No.
Okay. Well, how was it laid out? Was it a big school?
It was bigger, a lot bigger than Rock Hill because it had, uh, it had about 6 rooms. Or 7.
Who were your teachers there?
Eddie Byers, Mr. Moore, Miss Loretz taught there when I was there, but she was down in the elementary department, and I can't remember all the other teachers. I guess by me leaving Rock Hill going, that I don't remember.
How many months a year did you go to school when you were at Rock Hill?
We used to go divided because of the farm. We'd go so many months, and then they'd get out to pick cotton. We'd go so many months, then get out to plant it or hoe it or whatever.
Well, what was it like for you and the other students to leave from Tucker's and go to Newbold?
Well, it was fine because we didn't know what a bus was until we started going to Tucker's. We didn't ride. And see, that was different because we just go to the road and catch a bus and go. All the other times we was walking. And it was nice, but it was kind of scary because not knowing, going in a different area and not knowing what it was going to be like or how you was going to be accepted. It was, I don't know, but I know it made me study harder.
Really?
Yes, it really did. I'll never forget this one time we had this class, and this boy behind me said, "Oh, God, girl, you so smart. You're going to make a school teacher." And I said, "Oh, you kidding. Why you think I'm going to make a school teacher?" He said, "'Cause you got tablet feet and pencil legs." And I cried for all day. I cried all day because he hurt my feelings. And I don't know. We just had, it was just the thing about it, going to school. It was a lot of difference. And when we transferred from Tucker's to Newbold, it was really a lot of difference because here we were the little county children, and they were the city kids. And then they was bringing the county kids in from West Lincoln area and Georgetown area and everywhere. You know, sometimes you might have felt like, unless you really were just into your studies and what you was doing and whatnot, that they always thought that you were, I don't know, less.
So did you stick together with your
The
people from? I mean, did those people stick closer together from where they were?
most of them like to stick together, but I guess being who I am and whatnot, I made friends with everybody.
Who was your principal at that time?
G.E. Massey was my principal. He was my dad's principal because he went to Oakland at one time. He was my principal, and he knew who I was when we went to school and whatnot, from soft-spoken. Matter of fact, I went back and worked with him for a while, for him.
Who were some of your teachers there?
When I went to school there, it was Eddie Byers, because he went with us from Tucker's to Lincolnton. Miss Dixon, Miss Wilson, I can just see Mr. Diamond, Mr. Morris, and
were most of them from the county, or were they from other places? Do you remember?
All of them was from other places other than Mr. Massey. Because Mr. Byers was from Charlotte. I really don't know where Mr. Diamond was from. And then there were Miss Loritz and Miss Carson at that time had moved to Lincoln too. And Miss Loritz, Miss Carson. Let me see. I can't remember her name. I can see her face.
Did they stay with with families when they came here? When they came to teach?
Oh, the only one that I knew stayed with families were Miss Carson, because she didn't drive. The others had cars, I guess.
Well, tell me about some of the people you went to school with at Newbold. What all did you do for fun as a teenager?
Well, look, when I was going to school, what
At
did I do?
Newbold, in high school.
I didn't play no sports. I went out for basketball, but that didn't last very long. I sang in the glee club. What else did I do? Did things like oratorical stuff. And that's about it.
So being from out in the county, when you came to Lincoln, well, I should go back. When you were younger, did you ever go to Lincoln?
Mm-hmm.
What did y'all do when you came to Lincoln? Did you come once a week or?
Before Christmas, and we'd always go to Lincoln before Christmas. We had, if anyone was in the hospital, they usually had to go to Lincoln. Now, I remember going with my grandma Lizzie to the hospital, and that was when you had to go down in the basement to see one of her cousins was in the basement.
Which hospital did y'all go to?
Gamble's. Mm-hmm.
So what did you think of town when you were younger and you came to Lincoln?
You know, I guess I didn't know.
Did y'all go to anywhere else other than Lincoln for anything?
Mount Holly and Stanley, and they were closer.
Where did you shop? Or for Christmas time, what did you do? Do you remember?
Lincoln, mostly.
Where did y'all go? What shops did you go to?
The Learner Shop, V.C. Moore's. And it was it Collins or something on the
Cohen's?
Cohen's, yeah. Cohen's, yeah.
How did white folks in town act towards at that time when you were a kid? Do you remember anything?
Yes, 'cause I grew up through all of that. I remember all of it. I remember growing up. I remember us walking and them riding in the buses and hollering at the buses and all that stuff. I remember that.
When you were a kid walking to school?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the bus that came to pick you up, was there a black bus driver?
Yes, he was a Mr. George Johnson, an old man. Mm-hmm. And, you know, our buses just broke down all the time.
But as you got a little older and going to Lincoln, was it like that when you went to downtown Lincoln?
No, we had pretty good buses. And we had teenagers driving our buses. Smith Long drove one of our buses. He was from the Triangle area. I think we had maybe 2 buses that would leave Tuckers and go to Lincoln, and then the high school students would have to come back to the elementary school and get the elementary students and take them home.
Now, when you went to downtown Lincoln, did y'all ever go into any of the soda shops? Any of those shops, like the movie theater? Or?
We did. We went to, we'd go to, the one right across from school now. You had to go in the back door.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't go in the front door.
Now, as a kid, what age were you when you first, it came to mind about the fact that you had to go in the back door? I mean, when did it
Well, I mean, I knew that from the time I grew up. I mean, you know, it was just that you had to go in the back door. I knew that you had to go in the back door if you went to a white person's house. You didn't go in the front door. That's where we went, in the back door all the time. I mean, it was just something that you knew. Matter of fact, my great-grandmother's mom, and that was I know that was in slavery time. She and her sisters and her mom moved down from Catawba County. They were McCorkers. And she always told the story of her remembering that these white men came by on a wagon, and they lived across Mary Posey Road, going out Mary Posey Road. After you pass by that first brick house on the right, they lived as a little house that still stands back out there where they were living in. And they came by with this wagon, picked their mama and one of their siblings up, and they never saw them anymore.
Now, who was this that told that story?
My great-grandmother, the lady I lived with, Jane Morrison McCorker. Jane McCorker Morrison.
And she lived in that East Lincoln area. I mean, in East Lincoln.
Yeah, she lived in the area. I lived with her.
Mm-hmm. And she was the one who was actually a slave?
Her mom.
Her mom was.
Mm-hmm.
So she was a slave for the McCorkle family?
No, I don't know. They had moved from Catawba County. Now, they were McCorkers.
Well, what else do you remember her talking about? Now, did she live, how long, when did she pass away?
She passed away after I had my third child.
Really?
About 48, 49 years ago.
Did she talk a lot about her when she grew up and how things were then?
Mm-hmm.
Did she?
Mm-hmm. She did.
What did she talk about? Do you remember stories that she told?
Oh, she told a lot of stories about being in slavery, and you know how masters would beat them and how they lived, and how sometimes some of the masters would take their mistresses or the ladies and whatnot. Matter of fact, my great-grandmother, the one that I live with, had two siblings, and we know they were mixed because of the color and of the hair grade and everything.
What were their names?
They were McCorkles. Her sister that was mixed was Laura McCorker Chavis. She used to work at Lincoln Academy. And the man was Roy McCorker, was a brother.
So they were the two that looked like
Yeah, yeah. And my grandmother's name was Janie Ella McCorkle Nance Morrison, because she had been married twice. And her sister was Victoria McCorkle Nance. And they raised their siblings. I mean, and I guess that's why so many folk were in and out of our house all the time. They raised sisters and brothers. And then they married brothers, Charlie and Fawn and Nance.
You have a photograph of them.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I did. You had.
Yeah, copy of it. Now tell me, what do you remember about the mill there, the album mill at Mariposa? You remember the bridge that was there over the creek?
Mm-hmm. I remember the bridge that was there. Now I don't know whether it had a cover over it or not at ever, but I remember it because I had to cross over that bridge. I had to drive over that bridge when I was trying to get my driver's license.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So
It
where were
wasn't.
the houses? Were there mill houses around?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Little Mills houses was sitting all around.
And then you had the bridge, and then the mill was over this side, right?
Yeah, the mill was on. Yeah, on this side.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell me about when you graduated high school. What did you do next?
I graduated in '53, and I went. Well, after I graduated, my grandmother that I lived, my great grandmother, lived with. She got sick, and see, we lived in this little house by ourselves. And let me tell you about my little house we lived in. We lived in a house. We had one glass window, and the other ones was shutters, like where you open them up from the inside and close them. We had 2 bedrooms, and we had a fireplace in this bedroom, and we had another room with the fireplace. The fireplaces was in separate rooms, but they was like the chimney served for both of them. And the kitchen. We had a long back porch, and we had, no, the back porch was long, kind of crooked. The front porch was just straight across. We had a bunch of hedges was around the house. And some big old oak trees in the yard. And we like sit kind of on a hill where we could look and we could see our neighbors' houses, whatnot. We had a bottom down below us next to the creek. And I could look right straight across from where we lived and see the church. I mean, school, Rock Hill School.
Oh, okay. What kind of stuff did y'all raise on your property?
After I was born, we didn't raise anything much. We didn't have nothing but a little garden and stuff. We never had no cotton. We did have a cow at one time. And we had plum trees, the nursery plums.
Did y'all have chores that you had to do? Did each person have a set?
I go to the spring and carry water, because we got water out of the spring.
That was your only, I mean, you had other chores to do too, right?
Wash dishes sometime. I didn't do too much.
Tell them about cleaning the house and
Oh, yeah.
some of the other things you had to do.
We had to clean the house, and we might have had linoleum on the floor where we sat most of the time, but the rest of it was just wood, plain wood, and you had to scrub that with the broom and stuff and clean until it was like white looking. It was clean. We had to sweep the yards with a broom. Sometimes we'd make a broom out of brush broom. You know, go get some limbs off of the hedges and tie them together and sweep it till you sweep everything out of the yard. And then sometimes you would have a straw broom that you would sweep with.
Now, where did y'all go to church?
At that time, I was going to Rock Hill United Methodist Church on the hill.
So you mentioned having to go every Sunday. Were there some Sundays you didn't want to go?
Yes, it really was. Some Sundays you didn't want to go, but you had to go anyway. And at that time, the churches weren't having church every Sunday. You know, Rock Hill would have church one Sunday. Gold Hill would have church one Sunday. They would rotate. But they attended church every Sunday. The Sundays that Rock Hill had church, we had to go to. And the Sundays that Gold Hill had church, we went. Whatever program they was having at those different churches, we had to go and be a part of it. If it was saying a speech, like at Easter, how kids would say speeches, you said 2 speeches. You had one for Rock Hill and one for Gold Hill.
Well, who were some of your neighbors? You mentioned being able to see your neighbors.
A.J. McLean, Jack McLean, his wife's parents, Henry McLean, Street and Anderson, and they Mag, and the Sanders family. But at that time, they lived up a little farther than where we do. Now they live beside me, but they lived up the road a little farther. And then there was the Jacksons, the Luckys, the McLeans again, the Sanders, Bessie Sanders, and the Daniels.
Well, how did your church services at those churches, were those different than they are today? Are they kind of the same, or are they different?
To me, they are sort of the same because I guess when you have been in a Methodist church and then you go to a Baptist church, to me it's not much difference. It's not. I think where people get off track is they say you're United Methodist and you're Baptist, and it's not a denominational thing, no way. That's just a denomination. It doesn't matter.
Well, let's go back to school. So you graduated from New Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do after you graduated?
As I said, I had to go live with my mom at that time because my great-grandmother, whom I stayed with, had to go live with her daughter in Belmont, so I lived in Mount Holly. Mm-hmm. And I worked, did some house chores. But I wasn't there, but like, I think I went down maybe in March or February, and I got married this September. Mm-hmm. Noah, I got married in May.
Now, Franklin, your husband, you met him when you were young, right?
Yeah.
So did y'all date all that time, or did
Yeah, we dated a long time. We dated and we wrote letters, and he went in service. Went to Korea. Fought in the Korean War.
Did he talk about that much?
Yeah, a little bit. Matter of fact, he was partially disabled from the war.
Mm-hmm.
Did
he talk much about the military and being black in the military? Because, I mean, it wasn't too long, you know, when he went to Korea, it's just recently integrated.
Yeah, he did. And, you know, my husband had a bad thing with racial, and he was sort of bitter because this white man killed his dad when he was 3 years old.
Really?
In Denver. He was a brother to him. Uh-huh. Shot him because something about some potatoes. And see, my husband's relatives is from Denver. William Lowery, Sr.
What was your father-in-law's name?
Russell Lowery.
Russell Lowery.
Mm.
So, the man that killed your husband's dad, would that have been in like the 20s maybe?
Well, my husband was 5 years older than me, and he was 3.
So that'd been the 20s, like 20s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was about...
You were born in 35, right?
I was born in 35, and Frank was born in 30.
So he was 3 years old.
That'd be right.
Mm-hmm.
So So he carried that with him. I mean, he remembered that as a kid.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
And see, his granddad lived right in a little house that was across from Rock Springs Campground, up above where the spring is at Rock Springs Campground.
So your husband's grandfather lived there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where did Frank go to school?
I think Frank went to Ebenezer.
In that like elementary school he went there. Where did he go to high school?
He didn't go to high school. He went after he got out of service. He took classes at God, where did he go? Was it Belmont or somewhere where they had, when the boys would be going to school. He went to Gaston too. So.
But did he talk much about his service in Korea?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, he did.
Did it bother him?
Sometimes
Yeah.
he did.
Let's start with a second.
Well, tell me, be a little more specific about your husband Frank and his experience in the Korean War.
I think one of his worst experiences was that he and two friends of his, and his two friends were brothers, and the one got shot between them. And I mean, I think that was a pretty bad experience for him.
Yeah. Now, did a number of guys from Lincoln County, were they with him when he was there, or did they go?
No, these guys weren't from Lincoln County. I think they were from Mecklenburg County, but it was somebody that he knew.
Did he talk about others in his unit or whatever that might have been from the county?
No. I never heard him say anything about anybody being in his unit from Lincoln County. I know several guys he knew that was there during the same time that he was, but they weren't from Lincoln County.
Did he talk at all about being black and what kind of relationship they might have had with the white soldiers? Or
Yes, they had the same relationship, sometimes with the soldiers as they had if you were living here in Lincoln County. It was just a thing that blacks was not superior to whites. And that was going on even when my kids started school.
Do you personally remember anyone else going off and fighting in Korea or World War II from your community?
Korean War.
Or World War II, man?
Whether it was family or anybody?
My dad was in World War II. Yes, it was a lot of family members and things in World War II. There were the Luckies and oh God, because I remember that one of the ladies had, when they got home, she had some type of service for all of them. There were Luckies and some Grahams. And I don't know whether there was any random ones in there or not. Hunters. But for all the guys that went in service during that time from around our area, I know there was Jake Renneman, he's dead. Henry Hunter, Abraham Hunter, John Lucky, James Lucky, Waddell Lucky, Alfred Lucky. They all went. And there was a set of twins that went. John and James Lucky was twins too, from my area that went in service.
They they had a service at church for them. Somebody did.
Yeah, that was after they had got home.
So when you were dating Frank, what were you allowed to do as a young girl in dating? I mean, in terms of what kind of like taking did your
Most of us church stuff. But see, Frank, when I was dating Frank, Frank was still in service. Matter of fact, Frank stayed in service he had said he was going to make a career out of it. He stayed in service about 7 years after we were married. And then he got out. Came out, well, it wasn't 7 years, but it was a while. Because I had told him, I said, well, now look, we're going to have to be together. When we got married one day, one Sunday, and he left that Sunday night going to Alaska.
Was he in the Navy?
No, I don't mean Alaska. I meant Seattle, Washington.
What branch of service was he in?
The Army.
Oh.
Quartermaster, I think. Yeah.
So what did you do while he was gone? I mean, what kind of work did you do? Is that when you were working in Mount Holly?
No, after we got married and I went to live with his mom in Huntersville. I got a job working at West Charlotte High School in the cafeteria.
What year would that have been?
Must have been around 53 or 56. 56.
What part of town did you live in?
In Huntersville. I mean, Cornelius. Right behind, we lived right behind Smith Flores in Cornelius. I don't know if anybody know where that is or not.
So did you have to take a daily trip to?
Charlotte. Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
Riding the bus, riding with some of the neighbors. And waiting until they got up from work and riding back.
So had you been to Charlotte before then?
Not much, but a little bit. Enough to know. I had been enough to know where I was going and, and how to get back.
So tell us about your kids. How many kids do you have?
5.
Will you tell us their names and when they were born and what they do?
Marilyn Lowery Patterson. She was born in 1953. She's a registered nurse.
And your other kids?
Franklin was born in how old? He gonna be 50 this year. What year was Franklin born in? 57. Mm-hmm.
And what does he do?
Well, Lord, he was a magistrate for 18 years. He works in the housing authority, and he's our pastor.
Has Franklin always wanted to become a minister?
I never in my life thought he would be a minister. Never. Not Franklin.
Why is that?
Franklin got more whoopings than any of my kids. I mean, he did. He really did. I just never thought he would. Now, I thought Lewis, the second one, I thought he might have become a minister because he was always concerned about the older people. All the old people just loved him to death, and he would go and sit with them and talk with them. We had this one old lady that was real old. He'd go read the Bible to her, and, at night, you could go in the bathroom behind Lewis and you could find he had the Bible laying on the back of the commode. And that was, Reverend Lowry was in the street.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, as much as he was allowed to be. I never thought he would become a minister.
Well, how many other kids do you have?
Two. James Lowry. He's a, gosh, sergeant at Gaston Correctional. And Celeste Frazier Lowry, she works with Lincoln County. She's a teacher at the high school.
So when you were raising your kids, did you use a lot of the same things that how you were raised?
Sort of. I think I did. I think we were pretty strict. We was real strict with my kids. There were certain kids in the neighborhood they weren't allowed to play with. And, you know, don't never tell your kids you can't do this or you can't do that, because the minute you turn your back, they'll go try to do it anyway. Get caught. To the point where I guess I was overprotective, trying to keep them, that some people said I always thought they were better than everybody else. And I just I always wanted them to do good. And I always told them that you can do anything you set your head to do. Don't let nobody tell you can't, because you can. Remembering when we, before the integration came, me and Frank was president of the PTA. And that's when they was talking about the changes of the schools and stuff. And he had told me, he says, now I know you're going to get behind your kids and push. Said, send them to Rock Springs. Well, Lord, I did. And I mean, I don't think the kids had a bigger problem as adjusting as the other people did as accepting it. Because, why are you going to make them go there? Well, Merlin went to Rock Springs until they built East Lincoln High School. And she left Rock Springs going to the high school. By that time, she had made some real good friends at Rock Springs, ones that she still sort of stay in contact with, some of them that went with her.
So the PTA actually, so you had a choice of where to send them.
Yeah, I had a choice of where to send them.
Where else would they?
I think they would have stayed at Triangle. At that time, they was over here on 16 at Triangle. But, you know, my thinking is, now we've always got hand-me-down books. Why not get the best? If they're going to give you hand-me-down books and whatnot, if you go into Rock Springs, I thought, well, they're going to get the real books, the real things.
Did your kids talk about any problems that they had?
Not many. They didn't have very many problems, I don't think, because they never complained to me about it.
Were any of your kids the first black students to do any particular thing in the high school when they went to Rock Springs or East Lincoln, any of the sports activities?
I don't think they were the first, but they played basketball. They love basketball. I think a couple of them might have went out for a little football, but that just wasn't their thing. They, now Reese was, what is it, basketball. He got, well, I guess his name is still down there on the board.
Then he would have been MVP.
Oh, he and
Conference.
he and was it Coffee? Kevin Coffee. One of them. He and one of them was. And Frank loved to play basketball too, but they called him Peanut because at that time he was a little tiny. But he got to play a little bit. And he loved it so much, he got to play one game in college basketball, Belmont Abbey. Marilyn never was interested in playing no type of sports or nothing. She just liked to read, and she wanted to become a registered nurse. And she wanted to go to Presbyterian, and the counselor told her that you need to go to, what's the school name in Charlotte? Community Light School. CP, yeah. And she came to me and she said, Mama, I don't want to go there. And I said, look, you're going and you're going to have to do the work if you want to go. You go where you want to go. Don't let nobody tell you what you can't do. And she was the second black student at Presbyterian. And that's where she graduated from, and that's where she's working at now.
Well, talking about integration again, how did you all learn that you had that option? And the people in the PTA, did they want to do the same thing too? Like the other parents, did they want to do that?
Some of them did, and I think some of them were satisfied with the way things were. Some of them didn't want to do any better. They just were satisfied. You know, like, they always said, well, Mr. So-and-so always did this for us and did that for us, and, you know, I'm not going to go against them or nothing. But, you know, I guess, I did read a lot, and in reading a lot, you find out that there's more things to life than somebody telling you what to do, and when to do it, you got a mind of your own. And I mean, and you know, now, I tell you what, as far as integration or as the white and the black, I don't think as many problems come from the people that I had dealing with, because we were sort of like family. Now, when when we were walking to school and whatnot, the people on the bus sometimes would holler out at the teachers, and it got so bad until our teachers had to sort of drive with us, and they would have some confrontation. I remember one time they didn't dip snuff, but they stirred up them some snuff in a box, and when they was throwing their stuff out, whatever it was, they threw it back at them. And I mean, you know.